guys, so welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got an interview set up and a great guest on. I met industry workshops last year in London. Marek Madej of CD Projekt RED. Thanks for giving up your time, man. Thanks for talking to us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, like a couple of guys I've talked to on the podcast before, you were featured back at IW last year in London, where you talked about your process for 2D character design because you were working out of CD Projekt RED. But before all that kind of stuff and the talks and the job you have now, how did you get into concept art, the industry in general, kind of going back to your younger years?
It will be kind of long and not straight answer because because I started working pretty early. I was 19 back then, but I wasn't necessarily doing concept art back then.
Right. Yeah.
I just quit college. I needed work, so my first work was actually not connected to games. I was doing like chilled scrolling pack shots.
Right.
But it was only for a month, and after that I got work in games, but it was basically mobile games during the times where there were no iPhones.
Right.
Most of the games were basically Java games, so I was doing pixel art and animation for that, and it was like for a year. After that I got my real concept art job, so I was 20 back then. But the project never went out. It was shut down.
Right.
Because it was around this crisis in 2008.
Right. Yeah.
Like publisher were like, even though the contract was signed up, they after a while decided that they cannot afford it. So
yeah, which is commonplace now. I think there's more and more people taking on work in studios and things get cancelled last minute. So yeah, it's quite common now.
Yeah, well, so basically my first concept art job was kind of a failure.
Yeah,
I was there like for 10 months.
Yeah.
And then I kind of switched from games to advertisements. I worked on one short movie, a couple of commercials, one feature film, actually two, but one was only in Polish market, and one was Melancholia,
right,
from Lars von Trier. I was doing some post-production stuff for this movie, because at one point I didn't, at the company that I was working on after this failure project, there was not enough concept art work. So I started learning visual compositing, when basically composing the shots.
Right. Yeah.
So at that moment, I thought, okay, that's also cool. Maybe that will be a nice career. So I was more flexible because of that. I could do many different things. Like I started learning basics of like 3D programs, but just to be able to do matte paintings, and well, it was 2 years, like 2.5 years of making something that I wasn't actually happy with. I was doing some illustrations, freelance work whenever I could, some personal projects, and at some point there was like this call from a friend that I've met because of some how to say it. It was not professional project. It was basically a game that was like, back then in Poland there were many unprofessional projects where, okay, let's do a game. We don't know how to make it, but we can do it. Yeah. And because of that project, basically the guy who started it like got a work at CD Projekt.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And when they needed concept artists, he basically called me.
Great. And then you were in, that was you you're starting a career in that company.
Actually, getting into the company still was pretty hard and
Yeah.
took me 4 months.
Wow.
But yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah. And then going back even just kind of to the start of your story, you talked about leaving college. Did you kind of drop out? Just, I mean, you said you had work, but were you finding that the education at the time wasn't helping your art career? Were you just learning more on your own?
Basically I wasn't studying anything connected to art.
Right.
I just went to some technical school, mainly because my high school was a class I was in was basically about math and physics. So 80% of my friends were going to that kind of schools. So
Yeah, more kind of engineering and physics and
yeah, so I did that too. I was studying something like management and production engineering, something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is a
Yeah,
similar
but
story. Oh no, sorry. I was going to say which is a similar story. A lot of people I speak to. It's always, especially in this side of Europe. I think a lot of guys are pushed into careers that their parents think is more suitable. You know, that would be a steady job because art is still difficult for people to grasp how you make money
yeah,
in it.
but there's also this thing that, in my opinion, right now, like those art schools, like they're mainly focusing about like fine art,
Yeah,
and they are teaching a lot of stuff that it's not useful right now.
yeah. Oh no,
Like
definitely.
lithography, and so you spend many years not actually learning how to do any job, just
Yeah,
something that might be a hobby right now. Or
yeah, definitely. I mean, like, because obviously in Europe we don't have places like Art Centre or colleges of design
yeah,
that are like in Pasadena that are big things across there. So yeah,
it's changing slowly. Like when I was starting, there wasn't not there were no schools that even like was thinking about games. Right
yeah,
now we
yeah,
have a bunch of schools that actually teaching game design in general,
yeah,
or starting like at least concept art classes or 3D classes.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's good. It was good to see. I mean, I was even talking to that with Tim just recently, where he was saying about how even 5 years ago there was nothing online about concepting or 3D. ArtStation was non-existent even back then, so it's come a long
it,
way.
it I wouldn't say that there was nothing, but it was definitely
Or
not the
a
same
lot
amount
less,
as
yeah,
right
than there's just
now.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right now there is a lot of tutorials, video lessons.
yep.
It just the main problem is just selecting what's the best material to learn from.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think people are kind of spoiled with just now. There's so much, online. There's so much things you can look or read or study.
But on the other hand, I need to say that actually, when I was starting, my main knowledge, and I was basically learning because of the internet society, like a Polish forum.
Right. Yeah.
There was like a lot of guys that wanted to work in this industry, and a couple of guys that already worked.
Mm.
So posting any image there, like you could get a lot from it. And
Yeah.
when Facebook become more popular, it changed it completely. Right now, it's just about like it's hard. It's easier to approach people and get some feedback from them directly, but on the other hand, it's harder to get this feedback because if you post something on Facebook, you will just get likes and maybe
Yeah.
some, like positive comments, but nobody even uh, I hardly see any feedback that like
Helps you grow.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, which is the same with I talked to Justin Fields a couple of weeks ago, and he obviously started 10,000 hours on Facebook, and that's similar to something I think Derek done with Level Up, where they were trying to create that kind of forum community on Facebook. But with Justin's stuff, I've noticed that there is slightly a more professional edge. There's more people in it that are working in the industry, whereas Level Up now I think is getting more saturated with hobbyists. So there's less,
Mhm.
less professional. So again, that feedback you try to get is, people will say, "Oh, it's a great image," but they'll know and give anything constructive.
Yeah, then there's also this thing that when I was starting, like the level that you needed to actually break into the industry was completely different than now. Now you need to know and to be better than like I don't know, this 8 years ago to break into the industry,
Oh yeah,
because like the whole industry is like growing. The standard is like getting higher and higher. So
Yeah. I mean, even we were just talking about that with Tim, how like 3D is such a big thing now for concept, and especially even in 2D. Like, there's more and more people using 3D programs to build stuff before they paint over it, which is great. I mean, it's great that the industry's expanding to these other tools, but again, it's just more and more stuff you have to learn to make your portfolio stand out.
yeah, but there is this thing that like 3D is very helpful and may speed up your process, but if you don't know the fundamentals, it might not help you at all.
Yeah,
You will
definitely.
just like you will you might focus on wrong things because uh, you will be so high about like the 3D programs and getting like easy results
Yeah,
because it's easy to uh, go for easier way,
yeah, yeah.
I would say, and
Which is the same, I think, even when people approach stuff like map painting now. I think a lot of people think that with photography or with photos, you can cheat a lot of the time. Like, you wouldn't have to know much about painting to get something that would look quite good. But with map painting, obviously, you still have to apply basic composition rules, color theory, and lighting, which is all foundation stuff you learn as a painter. Um, so yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah.
like you might use photos, but if you don't know how light works, you will not compose them correctly.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're not setting your levels between the images, then the whole thing will look, just jarring. It's so oversaturated. But yeah, so and then obviously going back to when you got the industry, I mean, when you started working at CD Projekt Red, was that I'm trying to think years ago? Would have been when the start of the production of Witcher 3, or was that 2?
Yeah, it was basically when I was started. We already worked on Witcher 3,
Right,
but it was just before Witcher 2 was published on Xbox 360.
right. Okay, so then it was just a
So
transition.
I was basically working almost from the beginning of The Witcher 3.
Right, grand. And then I take it, were you brought in as character 2D kind of straight away?
Basically, them at the beginning mainly I was doing
Right,
environments,
right.
uh, and then at some point because I don't know, like I have this feeling that there is more people interested in creating characters, less people uh, wanted to work on environments.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was feeling that I need to actually earn it
Right.
to work on monsters and characters, but it
Yeah,
ended up like I was at the end of the day working more on characters and monsters than on environments.
yeah.
But still, I was probably the only guy who was working on everything
Right.
because in the industry, especially in the bigger projects, people are specialized.
Yeah, definitely.
But on the other hand, our team for The Witcher 3, at the beginning of the project, it wasn't that big. It was mainly 3 people plus lead concept artists. So
Wow. Oh my God. I even thought. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, where I think even the guy. I mean, obviously, it's a huge thing now with CD Projekt Red because everybody knows how small the team is. But I thought it was maybe like 10 to 15 people. But you're saying it was maybe four or
yeah,
five.
but like it changed at some point because there was Krakow studio opened and there was like uh, 2 additional concept artists. But like on the end of the day, if you look at the credits, there is many more people. But
Yeah.
like uh, for most of the production, the team was pretty small. Right now, they have more than 20 people that you might call illustrators slash concept artists in the
Right.
whole studio,
Right.
because the whole studio grow like more than 4 times since I started working there.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, even like the guys at Rockstar in Edinburgh, I know they employ maybe 10 to 15 2D guys, but they have like 130 3D guys there.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously there's so much more 3D stuff needs built. Are you kind of similar? Is it you got a larger number of 3D artists as opposed to 2D?
Yeah. Because you have like whole environment department
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
character artists and
yeah.
Yeah, like you have, for example, guys that are like technical artists that just working on how to make stuff easier to produce in, you know, so at the end of the day, like it's easier to produce designs and concepts, and then like making like 3D character for a game like The Witcher was like a month. Sometimes with the monsters, might might be even longer.
Yeah, and again, you worked on some kind of key elements in monsters and characters as well. What was your kind of main role going throughout the project? Were you doing a lot of the design early on for some of the newer characters or the newer monsters?
Like for The Witcher, it was like it depended on the situation, because there were a bunch of monsters that for example, I was just redesigning from the older concept.
Yeah.
Some of the monsters changed completely from the Witcher 1, like ghouls. Uh, I still tried to keep the original feel of the design, but like I don't know, like the movement changed because we had, you know, how to describe it. The whole process of creating monsters, for example, might be different from time to time. Sometimes, like animation dictates the whole
Movement and stuff.
idea, and sometimes we may have some ideas during the concepting phase. Like there were a couple of situations when I started working on the concept, and then we had like a meeting with the gameplay designers, and then through the conversation there were a couple of ideas for fight, the way you could fight with this monster.
Right. Yeah.
There were also some situations when we had like pretty nice ideas, but there was no chance to make them because of some technical limitations. And
Yeah. So the hardware was really defining what you could do with the characters, movement wise.
yeah, we had like many situations when we needed to use the same skeleton, because of the rig.
Yeah.
Preparing animation for every single monster and making them unique would be like very time consuming. So
Yeah.
we have a bunch of monsters that like basically using the same skeleton. And in many cases, probably those monsters looks very similar, but you have also those situations when you have like monsters like ghoul and wildheart minions that actually, in my opinion, it was like pretty successful in terms of making them looking quite different from
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. I mean, because like people obviously, I mean, there's some artists who I know have never really, they know of The Witcher, but they've never played it. But even to play it as a gamer, I mean, the game is so huge. I mean, there's so much stuff content-wise within that world. I mean, three was a real, I think, step up between two, because obviously, I mean, two was a big game as well, but three was just, it was massive. I mean, did you know, guys, going in like at the start that you were going to be making for next gen, like PS4 and Xbox One, and
Uh, I I really don't remember, but I guess it was the case. Like
because
at
exclusively
some
in the
point,
past you were making for PC, kind of exclusively to start with, weren't you?
yeah, I I don't remember correctly, so I don't want to like um, saying something
Yeah,
that was true. But I guess it was like from the very beginning we knew that we work on the next gen, but like nobody knew the specifications of the
right, yeah.
consoles at the beginning. So yeah.
So you were building more exclusively for PC kind of specs or typical PC specs at the time.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you also need to make this game work on those things. So
Yeah, you try to kind of anticipate the engine and build it around that, or what you think it's going to
I
be.
guess like it's most of the games. It's like at the beginning you work on the best quality, and then you optimizing stuff, and some of the things might look um, a bit different sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And again, with the characters and environments you were building, um, where did you? I mean, because obviously I was there at your talk, so I learned a lot about how you built your characters. But for the guys on the podcast, your process for building monsters and characters, that you draw a lot from real life, don't you, or from nature?
Um, it depends. Like for example, with the with Fiend, which was like one of the main recognizable monsters from The Witcher. It was like I've got this task and I wanted to make something unique, but also our game director, I guess, he came up with this Slavic mythology, or like it was a book illustrated by Paweł Zich, a Polish artist, and there was Fiend in this book, and he liked the way the monster looked like, but it's the whole book is kind of cartoony.
Right.
So I was basically working with this idea, but trying to make it look realistic. So I was looking at the real animals, and there was this whole thought process, like because like Fiend was basically a devil from the woods.
Right. Yeah.
So how this creature came, because I was trying to visualize the situation where somebody is going to the woods and see something in the bushes that looks like a demon or something.
Yeah.
And what's really connected to what's pretty similar, like what kind of animals it could be, and like it could be like European bisons that we still have in Europe, like in Europe, basically in Poland. Most of them are in Poland. Some of them are, I guess, in Belarus. I don't remember, but so I was looking at that kind of animals, and I wanted to add something else. So I was also looking at antelopes and some deers, because I wanted to add some horns. So but also, like in some cases, in terms of mood, we were looking at the Russian illustrator Bilibin.
All right, cool.
So yeah.
And then again with the environment stuff, were you basing that around trying to like extrapolate stuff from the books, or did you have an idea already going back from the first couple of games what you wanted your environments to look like?
Yeah, the thing is, like in the books, sometimes you have like some description, and sometimes it's just like one sentence.
Yeah.
So books, they weren't always super helpful in terms of visuals. In some of the monsters there were in the first and the second game, so we were just like refreshing the design. Sometimes we couldn't actually use the same design because of also some technical limitations, so we were just taking it and adapting to the things that we had.
Again, because even in the new Witcher, there's the main city that Geralt walks in and out a lot of the time. I forget the name totally, but there was a huge element of a kind of hub city that was the big focus of The Witcher 3. Was that a big task to undertake to build that, to design that?
Once again, because I didn't get the question, sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. I was saying within The Witcher 3, especially a lot of the early E3 demos, there was a huge city that Geralt would walk into a lot of the times. Your kind of main hub city in The Witcher that you designed. I'm trying to remember the name of the actual city itself, but I was just going to say, was it harder to design that as opposed to the more rural stuff, the more forest based stuff, or?
Yeah, but you are talking about the environment, like the land that
the environment.
So basically, you have like a no man's land, which is like a swampy kind of area, and Skellige that is like inspired more on the Nordic mythology and environment. So I wouldn't say that like there was anything like harder than the rest of it.
And I mean, because I think that was it, Novigrad. So Novigrad.
Novigrad. So the biggest city in there.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of the times within The Witcher, I mean, there's been times he's came in and out of towns and stuff, but Novigrad was a big undertaking because it was such an expansive place, so thriving with kind of life. Was that one of your bigger challenges in the game? Was kind of getting that to work?
Yeah, but the thing with environments was that because we didn't have a huge team of concept artists, and like so environment concept art was mainly as an inspiration for the mood, and
Yeah.
and only in certain situation there was specific place concepted, but like our environment team did a great job, like basically taking the mood from the concept and then building the whole area by themselves,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
I did maybe in only one situation a specific map for a place, but I don't even know if it was ever used in to build the village the same way as
Right.
I drew it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even going forward into where you're working at CD Projekt RED now, because it's such a big office, but a lot of people obviously that listen to the podcast want to know what a concept artist would maybe do day to day, or your kind of 9 to 5 during your working week. When you go in now, I mean, obviously you're working on a totally different project now, which you can't talk about. But even when you're going on The Witcher, what was your typical day? Did you spend a lot of time painting most of the day?
Mm, yeah, like at the beginning it was like mm, you just come to work. If you have like some task to work on, you just work on it, and then asking your lead character artist or concept artist about what he thinks and what to change with that. So the task might take. It depends also. Like some monsters took like 2 weeks to create a concept, but then as concept artist, you also help 3D artists to get the mood of the monster, because also working on monsters was a bit different than working on characters. When you
Yeah,
have a character, you know, character artists already have the proportions, so he just work on the visuals. And with monsters, when you do the illustration, you can always, in many cases, you can fake the form language. So
yeah,
like basically draw something that's works on the two-dimensional space and is faking the three-dimensional space and
yeah.
would not work in 3D.
Mm.
So yeah, but like basically every week we have like snapshots, even now, like where the team is gathering and we talk about what we did last week and what we can improve.
Hmm.
People are giving comments, what
Yeah,
they like, what they don't like.
yeah,
uh, and yeah, on daily basis you spend this uh, 8 hours. It's hard to be super focused for 8 hours.
yeah,
So during the day you also have lunch. So
yeah,
uh, sometimes there are moments when you also spend some time on meetings,
yeah,
talking about certain things. It depends also what we are working on, because there are sometimes harder tasks. If you, for example, work on some monster that will be a boss fight,
mm,
and then everybody wants to make it uh, as good as possible. So
yeah,
sometimes, the gameplay is influencing the visuals of the
yeah.
monster.
Hmm.
So you need to include that in your design. And it sometimes, when you start working on some task, the description might be really um, uh,
Vague or just
no, or, like sometimes it's really big, but like while working on it, it changes completely. And
yeah.
sometimes the whole description, this whole brief is just one sentence. Or
All right, yeah,
story artists will just with The Witcher 3, I had many situations when he ended up where story guys or quest designers, they send me to Wikipedia
all
and
right, yeah.
check it by yourself. And
Yeah, yeah. And again, because even like I mean, the first time, because actually, fun enough, the first time I played the Witcher game was Witcher 3, and one of the first bosses or monsters you come across is the Griffin.
Yeah.
And again, even just that design wise was great. I mean, like, I think it's good about that series where it makes every part or every character feel so alive. I even sometimes think the monsters have a lot more personality than the humans in the game. There's just so much more depth to them. Like, they're just so much more well-rounded characters. Did you even find that you preferred working on monsters as opposed to human characters?
Uh, to be honest, I like variety. If I would spend too much time working on one subject or like one theme,
Mhm.
I'm just getting bored.
Mhm.
So, as much a variety I can have, I like it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And is that a focus kind of going forward now? Are you trying to make sure that on your next project, the one you're working on just now, that you are still getting quite variety? Are you more environment focused this time, or characters again?
yeah, the thing is, like, because we can say that I work on Cyberpunk right now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
cannot say anything
Anything
else.
about
But
it, yeah.
the thing that I like the most about this project that it's completely different than the stuff we worked on before.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
right now,
I mean, I've only just seen the trailer, so I mean that's as
yeah.
much as I know about the project. So yeah,
Basically, I learn a lot right now because we work on things that we didn't work before.
hmm
We haven't worked before, so
yeah.
uh,
Because Cyberpunk obviously has an element of science fiction about it as opposed to fantasy, which is two opposite sides of
yeah,
the coin. Yeah,
yeah. Like, and you have like many things that like are like. Um, I just right now I'm thinking how to say anything that like.
something you can actually say
I,
that you're working on, or something you're actually doing
yeah,
without
yeah.
giving away what you. Yeah, but I mean, like, are you like again? Are you doing more environments or characters, or are you getting a mix of both? Or
Right now, it's like I'm basically in car because after The Witcher, they basically split the concept art team.
right?
So environment artists have their concept artists, and character artists have their concept artists,
Yep.
and there are many other tasks that you know. That's why we also was searching for like much more specialized concept artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And I take it, were you working on because obviously The Witcher released, and then there was two huge expansions after it.
Yeah.
Were you working on them past The Witcher 3?
Yeah, basically, not on to the same degree.
Right.
Basically, Blood and Wine was started in Krakow studio, and most of the stuff was like a lot of things that was like concepted exclusively for this expansion
hmm
was done by concept artists from Krakow,
Right.
which
Yeah.
was Andrzej and Marta and
hmm
I guess Grzesiek.
hmm
Uh, but yes, but during the Hearts of Stone, I was actually a concept art coordinator. So
Right. Grand.
I had there was like a smaller team working on this expansion. So I was basically helping um, character art director or
hmm
like character art director
Yeah.
uh, to split the tasks between um, the girls because
hmm
my team back then was basically four like three girls.
Yeah. All right. Grand.
Uh, so I was giving first feedback
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then again, obviously, I've seen through a lot of your personal stuff or your ArtStation. You were doing a lot of illustrations for the Gwent card game as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is this thing that basically at the end of the Witcher 3 production, there was like we knew that we will work on the card game for a game, but
Yeah.
we needed a lot of illustrations, and that was like kind of a big challenge because uh, for the most like biggest like most of the time I was the only one working on it, so I
Wow.
was
Yeah.
because like imagine the situation producer are just like okay we will don't need any illustrations. We will just take some concept art and art that we already have,
Yeah.
and just put it into a game. And most of the time it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Which is
uh,
interesting because obviously, working on a card game, there can be hundreds of cards. I mean, I know a couple of the guys I know who work on the Hearthstone team from
yeah,
Blizzard, and it's the same with them. I mean, they tend to sometimes freelance a lot of the stuff, so a lot of the guys that get external to do cards. Like I think you've done the same with Gwent. I know Dark at times was posting stuff that he done for Gwent, but then they freelance it. So were you finding with Gwent there was more people freelancing than in studio, or
it's
because there's so many cards to do?
yeah. There's this thing for them, because at some point the studio decided to make the standalone game,
Yeah.
and at the time, we already have had a couple of illustrations that we wanted to use. Basically, I did a bunch of illustrations that I had much more time to work on, and they were for the DLC.
Mhm.
There were like 10 cards that was changing the visuals of the card from the main game,
Mhm.
and those cards were basically uh, mm, chosen as something that's like showing the direction of the cards that we should approach with the standalone game.
Yeah.
And from this moment, we knew that we will need a lot of work. So a bunch of people like jumped on it in the studio.
Mhm.
Basically, there is a separate part of the studio that working like exclusively on Gwent.
Yeah.
Right now, I guess there is like 8 people doing illustrations, but
Yeah.
it took time to hire those people. So we also send a lot of stuff to outsource,
Yeah.
hiring freelancers, and like even Adrian Smith did a couple of cards for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And again, were you advertising that publicly, or was it more just like you as 2D artists knew people you could probably fish out to, so you spoke to them directly, or how did you advertise that?
uh, but you mean in what situation? Advertising the game, or like for in terms of artists?
Oh no, for Gwent, like if you were looking for people to do illustrations for cards, were you?
Basic, Basically, it was working like that. We were, everybody knew some names that would like to see in the projects, and we were basically contacting those people and asking them if they have time, and uh, if the rates are okay, and
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then again, now that the kind of Gwent's kind of getting to the end of its life cycle now, where it's going to probably be released soon, is that is your main focus just cyberpunk now? Is that the whole kind of enveloping theme of the studio, or are you just working, getting that game kind of started?
yeah, but, like with card games, it's like
It
you
never
need.
ends, yeah.
Yeah, you need to develop them constantly, putting like new cards and new mechanics,
Hmm.
because without that it might die. And like right now, Gwent is in closed beta. It will be open beta soon.
Yeah,
At some point, there will be whole campaign.
yeah,
That's that's probably gonna be awesome,
yeah,
um, because you will have like a character walking on the 2D drone kind of style
hmm,
map, and you will have like stories and
hmm, yeah,
um, from the Witcher world.
hmm,
And yeah, like right now I'm working exclusively on the Cyberpunk, but
hmm. You're still freelancing some bits and
part of the
pieces, yeah,
studio working on the Gwent.
yeah, yeah. And I take it when it comes to your illustration stuff as well, are you finding that there's a lot of kind of overlap with the cyberpunk stuff? Are you still using kind of similar design aspects or style, or are you finding you're having to kind of like retrain your eye because cyberpunk is so different? Or
Yeah, like in terms of like taste and I don't know, it might be because like when you designing monsters is kind of different than when you're creating something like, for example, technical, and when you try to incorporate that in characters. In many ways, like designing characters is like basically the same fundamentals, just the visual language is a bit different.
Yeah. Because it's more kind of technology based, whereas Witcher was more in nature, so it's a bit different style wise.
Yeah, like the whole style of the game is like developing, and that's something that I don't want to actually go too much into.
Yeah, because it's so early.
Yeah, but like I'm basically learning a lot because of the subject matter, and that there is this thing that whenever we work on something, we try to actually know how this thing works. Like, because it creates your design look more believable. I see many designs that, like, when you look at them, they don't make that much sense.
No real kind of function in the world.
Yeah, and I see people actually being inspired by art, and like not noticing certain things, and like, because like when you are taking your inspiration from other art, you just you can lose something in translation, because when if you would look at the reference or look deeper into the subject matter, you might realize something different than the other artist did looking at the same stuff. That's why 10 different people will do 10 different things from the same sets of references.
Yeah, and I think it's trying to incorporate things that I think for real life sometimes that can make things feel believable. I mean, I know going back years, looking at when Jim Lee redesigned the New 52 costumes for Superman and Batman, he actually took a lot of inspiration from insects and insect style armor patterns, which incorporated into their stuff. So that's what I think makes things feel more grounded, and people can believe it better when there's a lot of nature based in it, or things that come from nature. And is that something you incorporate into your art? Do you find you draw from life a lot and nature?
You know, it's always good to search for such things, but you know, with ideas, it's kind of weird, because you know, when you need the idea, it's not there. When you are already done working on some design, then you might accidentally get idea for this particular project, and that's something like many people like say that they like to work on something and finish it in one sitting, maybe maximum two, because like they hate it the next day. And I feel that too, but on the other hand, when I work on something, I also like to have time thinking on it, to actually like search for those ideas, or sometimes spend more time preparing myself before I actually start working on something.
Which is good, obviously, because I think there's more people I've found similar to you, where they will go and start something and then maybe come back to it a few days later because they want to try and have a fresh eye on it, you know, because you can get burnt out working on the same thing all the time. So
there is also this thing that actually when you work on something and you get yourself into this super focus mode, which is right now, it's like called flow, because there is whole like a couple of years ago there was no such definition as like everybody knew what it is, but nobody was actually exploring it. And right now actually people know a bit how the brain works during this moment, and that's why, like, because parts of your brain that it's like more that is actually judging everything that you do is actually not working on the same level, and your creative part of brain is starting working more. And that's why this day, like, if you work on something, you might like it, but the next day when your brain start working the same as usual, you don't like this stuff, because your judgmental part of brain is
it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And is that again like something moving forward? You would say for younger artists is to try and like do as well as to try and spend more time researching and thinking more about their art.
It's like the research is also a tricky thing because you might spend a lot of time doing research and then not use it at all while working, and
Yeah,
like it's easy to uh, go for too many reference images, and then yeah, like at the beginning I would say like that the making sketches is also a part of research, because like you just trying what could work and what could not
hmm,
work.
yeah,
So um, there is also this thing that like in many cases when you start working on something, it's sometimes problematic, not because you didn't do enough research, but because you don't know the fundamentals,
yeah,
or the subject is like you don't understand the subject.
right,
So
yeah,
it's definitely crucial to make the research in right way. For
hmm,
example, I was working on the boat for The Witcher 3. It
yeah,
ended up a little bit simplified in the game, but I
hmm,
did a bunch of designs of boats,
yeah,
and didn't knew I didn't knew anything about sailing basically. So
yeah,
I spent one day reading about it and like actually learning how uh, all of the parts of boats works,
hmm,
asking also one of the guys from our team about it, because he was actually sailing. So
hmm,
uh, there is this thing like sometimes to make something believable you need to make this research in not necessarily in a way that you just search for references, images, but
hmm,
sometimes knowing, learning how something works.
yeah, the function, yeah, yeah. And then even just talking about when you're building paintings and pictures as an artist now, when it comes to younger artists or people that would say, you know, I want to go work for CD Projekt RED or be in your department working in 2D, um, what do you feel is like a good balance for a portfolio? Do you guys look for, is it more style, you look for individual style, or are you looking for guys who are accomplished painters or composition story?
Basically, I would say that um, having like a good skill set, being able to create decent images is crucial, but there is also this thing that many artists that we hired, uh, it, those are people that have interest in particular subject matter. For example, we have a guy who he's just crazy about weapons, and like he knows everything about them,
Yeah.
and he is designing weapons. We have guys who are basically crazy about cars, and they know a lot about cars, and they
Yeah.
are like doing 3D, like they are working on cars in 3D and that
Yeah.
and so on. Like for example, in The Witcher, like I learned a lot from Marek,
Mm.
which was like, in my opinion, he influenced a lot the style of The Witcher 2 in terms of clothing,
Mm.
because he took a lot of visuals that were mm, from later times,
Mm.
even Renaissance,
Right.
and they were incorporated in the Witcher. And you don't see many projects that are fantasy that doing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say being basically interesting person in general, doing something specific and actually knowing everything about this subject would be helpful.
Yeah.
And it's also it's about the moment. Sometimes you need a lot of luck to
Mm.
get the job, because
Yeah.
there is many people. I remember when we posted information about internships, there was like 2 days to send your your email, and there was like 500 people
Yeah.
wanted to
Intern.
do to be an intern,
Yeah.
and from those 500 people, only two of the people get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, and I know how rare that is because obviously, you know yourself because you're on my Facebook, but I really just recently got an apprenticeship, well not apprenticeship, but an intern position at Axis Animation in
yeah,
Glasgow, which was I think there was over 200 people applied for it, and there was me and another person from my university got it, and yeah, it's a huge like I mean like because obviously it's it's a thing I think that I feel or have seen the last couple of years where more and more people through art books, through concept stuff, it's online and most places now in Google Images that I'm trying to think how to say this. But a lot of people think that it's a job where you go and you draw pictures all day and you get to hang out with your friends and play games and like even now I think there's more and more people that are going into something like concept thinking that it's like I mean obviously it's a fun job and it's great because you get to have a passion and get paid for it but people just aren't aware at the end of the day it's still work, it's still a job, it's still
yeah,
really hard to even one of these things where I never learned or I never thought when I started how it's one of these jobs where you're always learning, you never stop learning new techniques, you're constantly trying to fill your brain with as much stuff as you can, whether it be composition or color or paint techniques or programs or books. Do you feel that as well? That do you find that I mean, people who get hired is different because they're sometimes more passionate. But do you think people now or younger people trying to get into concept and have that idea of the industry that it is more gaming or more fun than real actual work?
yeah, I don't know. Like definitely, like every company is different, and there is this thing that you might love some games
Mm-hmm.
and might think that like this company would be the best for you, but
Yeah,
when you start working there, you might realize the work environment would not necessarily fits you as a person or your style. Uh, sometimes there are many people that they want to start from working at the biggest companies, but
yeah,
in reality, it's the hardest way to actually break in the industry. So it might not be the best idea.
yeah,
Uh, you also might have like you might be super lucky and get this job,
mm-hmm.
but not appreciate it because you don't have any
Idea of how hard
previous
it is.
experience
Yeah.
and idea how the industry actually looks like.
Yeah, I mean, like even across here in Scotland, even though being again a smaller country, a lot of people who want to get the games industry here look at places like Axis or places like even Rockstar in Edinburgh, making Grand Theft Auto. But um, a lot of these big, huge companies, people who have came in from smaller indie studios. So obviously there's more and more of them in Scotland now, like Blazing Griffin and Outplay, where I think that's probably a better kicking off point to start your career as opposed to going into these bigger studios.
Yeah, even the CD Projekt, like when I was starting working there, like it was definitely less known studio as now, like after The Witcher, and because of that, like these 5 years ago, it was easier to get into the studio
Yeah,
because there was less people that actually wanted the job.
yeah,
Uh, but going back to your question about reality and the real life of concept artists, like
mm,
the 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 biggest struggle and the hardest part is I guess having ideas all the time, and sometimes you work on something for a month and you just basically it's hard to and you cannot nail the design. It's like nothing is working. Sometimes you work on something for uh, I don't know, like 3 months, and it ends up in a trash at the end of the
yeah,
day because something like not necessarily it was about the visual design, but it might not like maybe it wasn't fitting the whole game in
yeah.
general. So um,
Which which I think is an important thing as well, because I think you should be able to walk away from a painting when it isn't working. Like,
Yeah.
don't labour the point that you have to finish something. I mean, it's great to finish a painting sometimes to make that point where you can finish something if you're constantly not finishing paintings. But I think a lot of people have to realise, even younger artists I've noticed, where you don't have to stick with a painting till death. Like, you don't have to be constantly making it sure that it's finished, it's 100% complete. If you feel it's not working, then just delete it. Don't bother saving it. Just get rid of it.
And there is also this thing. I Whenever I was working on some personal image, I was working on it. If it wasn't working, I was just stopping working on it. But I did that mistake that I wasn't approaching the same idea from different angles, for example. And sometimes it's better to just scrap the image, start over, like getting what was working from the previous sketch or illustration, and then using that to create something maybe better.
Something new. Yeah, I mean, again, when we talked to Borker earlier on, he was talking about the market scene that he done, where he basically built a whole market to start with, and then he just recropped the image to focus on one area, which is...
Yeah, so I saw it. He was talking about it at industry workshops.
Yeah. Well, and that's what he's saying is he always talks about how paintings really come together in like the last 3 or 5%. Like, sometimes an image won't really be like nailing it until the last maybe half an hour you spend in it. Because that's when you find your flow, as you talk about. You'll maybe render stuff for maybe an hour, and then eventually you get to the last maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and you're like, all right, cool, I know where this is going now. So
yeah, or you might spend 10 hours on something and basically destroy it.
Yeah, burn it with fire. So yeah, that's great, Marek. That's been a great talk with you about all the things you've done in industry. For the guys who don't know you, how can they find your work? You're an ArtStation and you have a website?
Yeah, I'm on an ArtStation. Basically, if you search for Marek Madej, I guess I'm the only guy like with that name on the ArtStation.
Yeah, pretty unique. And then you have Instagram as well. Oh no,
yeah, I have. Yeah, like basically, my nickname on web right now is like Bandit Pencil.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have a web page. I'm trying to update it, but it takes time because whenever I'm working on it, I'm just changing the visuals of the website, and then I'm bored at some point and starting over. Like, yeah, but basically artofmarekmadej.com.
Okay, that's great. Well, just finally to thank you, Marek, for coming on and speaking to us. It's been great having you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries, man, no worries at all. And for other guys who are listening, to go check out his work. Also, you can check my work out. I'll leave the links in the description below, and of course check us out on iTunes and YouTube. We'll be coming back with more interviews soon, and yeah, that's great. Thanks guys, see you later.
Thanks.